Lost civilizations more powerful than we thought. In today's episode, we will visit 7 extraordinary places scattered around the world. We will visit Göbekli Tepe, a temple that contradicts all known dates of the origin of civilization. We will look into the stone eyes of the colossal Olmecs heads. We will also visit the mysterious island of Nan Madol, built of basalt blocks in the middle of the ocean. And this is just the beginning. There are still a few other places waiting for us that equally undermine what we know about the past. Places that shouldn't exist, but do. Göbekli Tepe, the beginning we forgot. On a hill in southeastern Turkey, there is a place that changed our view of the beginnings of humanity. Göbekli Tepe, because that is what we are talking about, is a huge megalithic complex, dating back to about 12,000 years ago. This means that it was built 6,000 years before Stonehenge and 7,000 years before the first Egyptian pyramids. What makes this place special? First of all, the fact that it was built in an era when, according to textbooks, people were still primitive hunters and gatherers. And yet someone erected huge stone columns in the shape of the letter T, some weighing over 10 tons. Some of them were decorated with precisely carved images of animals: lions, scorpions, birds, and snakes. Every detail testifies to a high level of artistic and symbolic meaning. What is even more extraordinary is that the entire complex was deliberately buried, not by nature, but by humans. Someone, for some unknown reason, covered it with earth and rubble. Why? Was it to hide something from future generations? Or was it a ritual act to end an era? To date, only a small part of the complex has been discovered, an estimated 5%. The rest still lies beneath a layer of earth and silence. Archaeologists agree on one thing: Göbekli Tepe should not have existed at the time it was founded. And if it does, it means we have to rewrite history. But are we ready for that? Nan Madol, the black stone water city. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, among the green islands of Micronesia, there is one of the most mysterious places on Earth, Nan Madol, an abandoned city built of huge basalt blocks, connected by a system of canals and artificial islands. Called a ghost town by locals, for archaeologists, a great unknown. It was probably built between the 15th and 12th centuries, although some scholars suggest that its foundations may be much older. What makes Nan Madol so unusual is its construction technique. Instead of bricks or wood, basalt columns were used, naturally hexagonal, weighing up to several tons each. They were arranged in layers, creating something like giant palisades above the ocean surface. The city consists of about 90 islands, which form a network of ritual, residential, and administrative zones. Some of them were supposed to be reserved exclusively for priests and rulers. The rest of the population was not allowed to enter them. According to local legends, the stones were moved by magic, levitation, or spiritual energy. As incredible as it sounds, there is currently no technical explanation for how the islanders without access to metal or the wheel could have built something so advanced. What is equally intriguing is that the city has no agricultural base. Built on a lagoon, separated from the mainland, it does not offer living conditions for thousands of people. And yet, it was built. Why? For what purpose was such a monumental structure created from an almost impossible material? Nan Madol doesn't answer questions, it just multiplies them. And it seems to whisper that there's more to the history of the Pacific and the world than we think. Olmecs, colossal heads and forgotten masters. In the dense tropical forests of what is now Mexico, archaeologists have stumbled upon something that has forever changed the idea of Mesoamerican cultures. Carved from a single block of stone, giant heads with realistic faces, wearing helmets and weighing several tons. The largest of them is almost 3 meters tall. No one knows who they represent or why they were created with such precision. The Olmecs, as the creators of these sculptures are called, are considered the mother culture of Mesoamerica. Their civilization developed between the 16th and 4th centuries BCE, long before the Maya or Aztecs. Despite this, they left behind traces indicating a sophisticated social structure, knowledge of the calendar, writing, monumental architecture, and advanced sewage systems. The biggest mystery, however, are the heads themselves. They seem to be portraits of specific individuals. Every detail of the face is different. Mouths, eyes, noses, proportions. These are not anonymous figures. Were they rulers, warriors, or perhaps representatives of an older culture that we know nothing about? 17 such heads have been found to date, scattered across several archaeological sites. Most of them were located far from the sources of basalt from which they were carved. This means that they had to be carried dozens of kilometers through swampy and mountainous terrain, without the use of wheels, carts, or draft animals. Stranger still, although the Olmecs had advanced knowledge and influenced later cultures, almost no written records of their daily lives or beliefs have survived. It was as if someone or something had erased them from history, leaving only monumental stones and unanswered questions. Tiahuanaco. Who built this stone city? High on the Altiplano Plateau in Bolivia, more than 3,800 meters above sea level, there is a place that has stirred controversy and fascination for decades: Tiahuanaco, a city whose existence raises questions not only about who built it, but also when and how. According to official findings, the Tiahuanaco culture developed around the 3rd century AD. But many researchers, especially independent ones, claim that the oldest fragments of the city may be as old as 12,000 years. And some go even further, suggesting that the place existed before the last ice age. The most famous feature of Tiahuanaco is the Sun Gate, a massive monolith weighing dozens of tons, with carvings that some scholars believe constitute a kind of astronomical calendar. There are other giant blocks in the area, carved with a precision we would not expect from a culture that, according to textbooks, knew neither the wheel, nor writing, nor advanced mathematics. Even more mysterious is the way the stone was processed. The edges and corners are perfectly matched, as if someone had used not a chisel, but a technology reminiscent of today's laser cutting. The gaps between the blocks are so narrow that even a razor blade cannot be inserted. In addition, many of Tiahuanaco's architectural elements appear unfinished or destroyed. Some argue that the city may have suffered a catastrophe, an earthquake, a flood, or some global cataclysm that ended not only its history, but the entire civilization that created it. Tiahuanaco does not provide easy answers. Rather, it provokes, and asks the question, is it not sometimes that which we call the beginning, merely an echo of something that came before? Petra, legacy of a forgotten civilization. In the heart of the desert of southern Jordan, hidden between pink cliffs, lies Petra, a city that looks as if it was created by the gods. Facades, columns, and temples carved from solid rock delight tourists from all over the world. But the more we learn about Petra, the more questions arise. The official story is that the city was founded around the 3rd century BCE as the capital of the Nabateans, a mysterious people who grew rich trading in spices and incense. The problem is that Petra's monumental architecture seems to be beyond their technological capabilities. How was it possible that dozens of enormous structures were carved with mathematical precision in such inhospitable terrain without modern tools? The most famous structure is Al-Khazna, or the Treasury. Its facade is almost 40 meters high, and every detail, from the acanthus leaves to the colonnades, is perfectly symmetrical. But the Treasury is just the beginning. Deep in the valley are tombs, amphitheaters, altars, and a system of water channels carved into the rock. Although the Nabateans are credited with building the city, some scholars suggest they may have merely replaced an earlier civilization that first shaped Petra's rocks. Archaeologists are uncovering layers upon layers of the city, hidden courtyards, stairways leading to nowhere, and structures dozens of meters beneath the sand. Petra left no chronicles. It does not tell who really built it, or why it was built there. It is like a riddle without a key. Only the silence of the stone and the echo of visitors' footsteps repeat the same question: do we really know its beginning? Egypt, pyramids that do not fit their era. The 3 great pyramids rising above the Giza Desert have fascinated and stirred controversy for centuries. The largest one in particular, the Great Pyramid of Cheops, still holds more questions than answers. It is officially believed to have been built around 2500 BC as a tomb for a pharaoh. But if we look closer, nothing about this theory seems certain. First, no hieroglyphs, paintings, or any inscriptions have been found inside the Great Pyramid to attribute it to a specific ruler. Nor has a sarcophagus or decorations been found that would indicate its funerary nature. The monumental structure, built from over 2,300,000 limestone blocks, some of which weigh several tons, was built with such precision that it would be difficult to recreate it even today. Secondly, the orientation of the building. The sides of the Great Pyramid are almost perfectly aligned with the four cardinal directions, with an accuracy that even medieval observatories could not achieve. Its mathematical proportions indicate knowledge of the number pi, the golden ratio, and astronomy at a level difficult to imagine for the ancient world. Some scholars suggest that the Great Pyramid was not built at the time of Cheops, but was already old at that time. It could have been a remnant of a much earlier civilization whose knowledge was lost or deliberately forgotten. Why is it that no one today can explain with full conviction how the Egyptians built such a perfect structure without cranes, steel, or modern mathematics? Is the Great Pyramid just a tomb, or something much older and more important? Baalbek, the unsolved mystery of antiquity. In Lebanon, at the foot of the Anti-Lebanon Mountains, lies one of the most mysterious archaeological sites in the world, Baalbek. The place is famous for its colossal ruins of Roman temples, but what attracts the most attention are the gigantic stones from which their foundations were built. Stones so large that even today's cranes would have trouble lifting them. The most famous of these is the so-called pregnant woman stone, which is estimated to weigh over 1,000 tons. Next to it is a second, even larger block, discovered only recently, which may weigh over 1,200 tons. These gigantic monoliths lie partially buried in the ground, and the question of how they were extracted, transported, and arranged in the structure remains unanswered. Interestingly, the most impressive stones are the foundations of later Roman temples. This means that the Romans were not their creators. They merely built their buildings on something that already existed. But who could have created these titanic structures? There are no records that would explain how such large elements were transported, or what was the reasoning behind choosing such huge sizes. In addition, the blocks are precisely fitted together, creating an even, stable surface without the use of mortar. Some archaeologists suggest that there may have been an ancient technology of lifting and carrying loads here that we can no longer reconstruct. Others consider Baalbek to be the remains of a prehistoric cult center, dating back to a time before recorded history. This place continues to defy logical explanation. Do we truly understand what happened on this land thousands of years ago? And who built it? 7 places. 7 unanswered questions. Ruins that shouldn't exist. Buildings that are ahead of their time. Traces of civilizations that history is silent about. Is it possible that someone before us has already reached the peak of their development and disappeared? And if so, what did they leave behind? And why do we know so little about it? Maybe it's all just a coincidence, or maybe it's just pieces of a bigger puzzle that we can't put together yet. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you want, and see you in the next episode.